Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Fishman, and my company is called Hope Organizers. I'm a professional organizer, and each month I interview an expert in their field because everything in life involves organizing, including if you're doing landscaping at your house and you need to know where you're going to plant the bushes, the rose bushes, the flowers, the vegetables. Or if you're going to go grocery shopping and you need to plan your week's worth of meals, or a holiday is coming up and you're doing a big holiday dinner and you need to plan your holiday foods and where people are going to sit around the table. So everything involves organizing. Tonight, we have with us a bookkeeper to talk to us about financial organizing, because one of the most important things that affect all of us is bill paying and managing our finances. And this really comes into play not only if you have a business or you need to keep your personal files, but if you want to refinance your home or you want to rent an apartment, they're going to ask you for your bank statements going back a few months. They're going to ask you for pay stubs. And if you can't find those, then you are going to have a hard time producing what you need to get the result that you want. And so organizing your finances, your bills is extremely important. And it's tax season right now. I think all of you probably heard that the IRS extended the deadline till May 17th, which is good because it gives us all an extra month to, get papers ready. And if you didn't get them organized yet, you now have some more time. And those people who are expecting refunds, you can get yours in early and hopefully get that refund on time. So everything involves organizing, and we have Julie Gunvalson here this evening to speak to us about that. So a little bit about Julie. She graduated from Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1998. And in 2008, she returned to school to study accounting. She worked for a busy CPA firm in Los Angeles for 8 years and also began providing bookkeeping to private clients. She built up her private client business, and she then relocated in 2016 to Idaho. She continues to serve her clients here in California, and she actually, before COVID, would come every quarter to meet with her clients, and she'll start that up again once it's safe to travel. She's always staying on top of current laws and technology programs. She's part of the American Institute of Bookkeepers, as well as several bookkeeping networking groups, in order to stay current. So, Julie, I mentioned a little bit about why I think it's important to be organized. Actually, I'm going to say one other thing. I help my clients a lot find unclaimed property, and the paperwork that you need to supply to get a deceased relative their papers is really a lot. And so clients that have held on to important documents, it makes it easier for us to get those papers in order. But can you, from your perspective, tell us why it's important to be organized for bookkeeping purposes?
Sure. Being organized just keeps you aware of your money, and it also gives you more control over your money, both in personal finances and also in your business. And it really helps when you have to file a tax return at the end of the year, or do a large purchase like a home or a home refi, or like you mentioned earlier, like if you're trying to rent an apartment or a space, you have to provide your financial information for that. And some people just like to have a monthly budget and see where their spending is at. And that's one way to stay on top of your budget, is to keep everything organized. Another thing is you want to always be watching all of your accounts for fraud. If you check it on a regular basis, you are going to catch any fraudulent activity on any of your accounts and be able to deal with it immediately. And you're also able to keep track of the payments that you make to all your vendors. Sometimes you'll notice if there's anything funny going on, if someone raises their price on you, or if you get double billed, you'll notice it right away if you stay organized and on top of your finances.
Thank you. Yes, I see that a lot of clients, they don't pay attention to their credit card statements. And I come in and I have to call the credit card companies to get the fraud out because they're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
What are important organizational steps that a business can follow with regards to financial organizing?
Well, a business is just like personal. You want to stay on top of your accounting, and businesses are often asked to produce their financial statements for various purposes and for their own purposes as well. So you want to be able to, at any given time, run like a profit and loss statement or a balance sheet and be able to accurately see the position of your business at that point in time. At the end of the year, businesses have to do W-2s and 1099s, and throughout the year you have to do payroll. So you want to always know where your money's at so you can pay your payroll on time and have enough money to do that, and also correctly file all of those end of year forms. Another very important aspect is knowing who owes you money. If you're invoicing your clients, you want to keep track of who has paid you and who still owes you money, keeping some sort of invoicing system. You can track your bills that you have to pay now and in the future. You can enter bills in advance so you can see ahead to how much money you're going to need to have in your account. There's lots of things here. Tax, you want to be able to make your quarterly tax payments, your sales tax payments, your payroll tax payments. So you need to know where your money's coming in and going out so you can pay those on time and have enough money to cover them. You want to monitor your inventory if you keep inventory as a business. And in LA County, every year you have to file for your city business license renewal. So you have to be able to tell them your gross receipts accurately so you pay the correct amount of tax and can stay in business. Other cities have requirements as well, and specific industries may have permits or licenses that you need to submit financial information for to stay in business. And you also want to make sure that all your insurance is being paid and kept intact. Your workers' comp is very important. And then business liability, E&O, or cyber, and whatever other kind of insurance you may have to carry for your business. You want to make sure those payments are getting made and not lapsing.
Yeah, as we were talking about before we started the Zoom, is I was at a client the other day, and there was payments that weren't paid to this person when he was in business, and it went into unclaimed property, and we're having a kind of a hard time proving that these finances belong to him. So yes, it's very important to manage the money and watch the money that people owe you. Mm-hmm. And if there's anyone on the call that's going to be starting a business, it's really important to lay that foundation. Get everything in a new business organized, from legal matters to setting up the finances, getting all the insurances, all the bookkeeping, everything, in all the taxes, all the regulations, all the permits, insurances, everything that's required to start a business. Can you talk about the consequences that being disorganized that you've seen as a bookkeeper? What are some of those consequences of disorganization that you run into?
Well, yeah, some people, I've actually seen businesses that have not maintained any books whatsoever. And obviously that's a disaster at some point that ends up having to be dealt with. So it's just really creating a bigger problem for you later. Because like we talked about, you're going to need those reports and your documentation at some point for some type of loan or application. And a lot of people, they will pay for software like QuickBooks, and then they don't properly use it, or they don't use the full functionality. So they may have transactions flowing in, but they might never actually look at the accuracy of the reports or the accuracy of those transactions. And then again, the longer something goes, the bigger the problem it is to deal with later. And of course, some people don't file tax returns. Disorganization can lead to just not really being in a position where you're able to file your returns. And then of course, penalties and interest, and then it's just harder and harder to do it the longer the time goes on.
Someone has a question, it looks like.
Oh, yes.
It's a comment.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I wanted to share that you were talking about disorganization, and I had to take a business ethics training, kind of that annual training for my company. And we had a whole section on record keeping and why it's so important. And there was a little case study. Don't worry, I got the question right. But there was a little case study that said, what should Sally do in this situation? And it was basically, they hadn't kept their records. It was the end of the year. They didn't have the accounts correct. And then the boss said, oh, just fudge a few of the numbers. It's fine. Make it close. Right. And then the question was, what should she do? And so it was a whole, moral dilemma there of making sure that you have the proper records, because you can't submit those things. You can't fudge numbers, whether it's taxes or accounts. It's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a good point.
Good. Yeah, it's nice they put that in your class for just any type of business, and it's not just in accounting.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with record keeping, but they want all the employees to do that stuff, I guess, just in case. Just in case they put something important in my desktop, I have to be smart about it.
There you
go. It is important because to go a little bit off topic, when I worked in corporate America and had a drive to clients and purchase items for seminars that I was doing, we had to submit expense reports and we had to submit the receipts. And if we didn't have the receipts, we didn't get reimbursed. So it is really important that you maintain those receipts. And that's part of financial organizing. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, yeah, there was a few more things on this list of just consequences from being disorganized. A lot of people try to rely on their memory, which never works. Especially when you're January, February, and you're in a rush to get your taxes, and you told yourself a year ago, I'll remember that deposit, that it wasn't income. You won't remember that. And I've seen another thing that I've seen in businesses happen is that there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. They will give all of their employees access to QuickBooks because they feel like there's things in there they should see, like a bill, or they want to maybe do an invoice for a customer or something. And then everybody suddenly thinks they're an expert in QuickBooks and starts doing all kinds of things, and it just creates a really big mess. So it's better to keep your QuickBooks or your accounting separate from the everyday employees' use, so that the person who's doing it actually is doing it correctly.
Does one have to use QuickBooks, or can they use another program similar, or can they just use an Excel spreadsheet, or those books that you buy at the office supply stores?
You could, yeah, you could always go paper. That would still work if you followed it all the way across. But no, a lot of companies, they don't use QuickBooks. They use like Sage Accounting, or there's Accounting Suite. There's several competing programs, and it kind of depends on the type of business that you have. And then usually if you have, if you need to get information from other employees, then you might, utilize like a sales program, or just do Excel spreadsheets for things. And then that would be sort of your backup that you would give to the person that is keeping track of the accounting.
Are there any other consequences of disorganization, or did you cover those?
Oh, there was a couple more that I had listed. One was just not maintaining backup documentation, which I'm going to talk later on about the PPP loan. I'm sure everybody's heard of that by now. And that was to get those loans. There was a lot of backup documentation needed for that. And it's just very important to make sure you know where to find your backup for anything that you may need it for. And another thing, this is sort of, again, kind of relates to COVID. You always want to notate anomalies in a bill, which there's, in most accounting, there's a spot you can do a memo. And I'll give an example of myself. During COVID, my internet company, they gave me 2 free months of internet in April and May. They said, we're not going to charge you because of COVID. But then at the end of the year, when I went to do my taxes, I said, oh, I'm missing 2 payments. I only made 10 payments to my internet. I should have made 12. What happened? And I had to think it through. Whereas what I should have done is just put in June, paying again. Yeah, paying again after a 2-month break or, something like that. So you always want to notate if there's a bill that's either, lower or maybe it's double for a reason. You always want to put why that is. So when you go back that you won't have to search for the reason at that time. Well, someone has a comment.
Yeah, someone said that they're doing that on their monthly budget sheet. They write a note so that they remember. Very good.
Yep.
Okay, what is the importance of properly organizing and maintaining your business as a business?
This is, I think, one of the more important questions, because I see this happen, like this is a problem with a lot of people. So the first thing is just when you have a business and personal, don't mix the money. Keep everything separate as much as you possibly can. And have a separate bank account for your business, have a separate credit card. So everything business is all in one spot. If you do have to take money out of your company to pay your personal bills or opposite, vice versa, you try to be as consistent about it as possible. For example, maybe you take an owner's draw. Maybe you do that every Friday. You take $300 every Friday from your business to your personal, so that it's always consistent and you're making a good note of why you're doing that withdrawal every week. And be consistent in paying your bills with the same account. So it's when you are having a new business, especially, and you may not have money in your business account to cover things, and it may be easier to just pay a bill 1 month out of your personal, 1 month on your personal credit card, and then, okay, the business has money this month, I'll pay it on this. But later on, that's just really hard to figure out what you did. So it's better to just keep it all in one spot if possible.
What are the most common challenges you see that people have if they're using QuickBooks?
A lot of people don't understand just the basic way that accounting flows through, where everything appears in 2 different accounts. So that can lead to errors.
Can you elaborate what that means?
Well, what I tell my clients a lot of times is, like, they'll say, don't record this, or don't put this here. It's like, well, the money, if you're recording an expense, the money has to come from somewhere. You can't have an expense with no place that it came from. So you have to keep in mind, well, you're going to have something going to expense like telephone, but then that money's going to have to show up coming out of another account, whether it's your bank account, or maybe if you paid it personal, then that would have to go into your owner draw account. But it's not like you can never do anything just one-sided. There's always two sides to every transaction.
So are you saying that if it's a business expense, but somehow you paid personally, you need to show that you pay yourself back from the business? You have to be reimbursed from the business?
Oh yeah, you should reimburse yourself as well. That would be a separate transaction. Okay. But some people will just think that they'll say, oh, well, I paid the phone bill from my personal account, so just record the payment, but don't say where it's from. Well, there has to be another side to that, and it's going to show up.
It has to be accounted for.
It has to be accounted for, and it'll show. It's going to be evidence of what you did. And then another common challenge that I see is just not consistently categorizing your expenses. And I think an example of this is like computer expenses. There are so many different things we pay for now with our internet, and then we have software, and we have our email, and people will put it, oh, that's a dues and subscription. That's a computer, that's the software. And they end up all over the place. And then when you want to say, how much have I paid for internet this year? Well, you might have to look in 5 different accounts to figure out that total. So it kind of leads to just more work for yourself if you don't consistently put your categories the same for your bills.
You know, that's what I've noticed recently with my clients as I've been helping a lot of them get their documents ready for taxes, is in the olden days, we either paid cash for a bill or we wrote a check, you know, and or maybe, you know, a cashier's check. Well, that's still kind of like a check. But nowadays you have to check, you have to examine, did I write a check? Did I put it on a credit card? Did I pay with a debit card? Did I pay with Zelle or one of these social media kind of payments? Did I pay with Bitcom? Did I pay with PayPal? Like all these multiple different ways of paying. And it's like very confusing when you have to total everything at the end of the year for tax purposes. How do you handle that? Do you, like, if they have all these different, do you have to like separately, do you have to go first through their bank account, then look at their credit card statement, then look at their debit statement, then look at their Zelle statement? How do you handle all of those?
Well, a lot of those come through on the bank statement.
Okay.
And some people, like if you use PayPal, it can be recorded like a bank account on your books. Some people, they keep, like they might get payments from their clients on PayPal, and then they might in turn pay vendors with their PayPal, and then the balance they will transfer over to their business account. So that's just like a bank account because it's going to have a balance in it that you would need to account for on your balance sheet at the end of the year. Whereas if it's just a one-time, like Venmo, a lot of times it might just be a one or two time. It's not a balance that you carry of most people. So that would just be, you know, a bank transaction. I usually put, you know, I don't know, outside service, and then I will put in the memo paid via Venmo or something like that so that we can search for it if we need to.
In the future. So you notate in a note column or a comments column which of those multiple ways of paying it came from. Okay.
Right. If we don't have it as a separate account, I notate it in the memo. Correct. Okay. We still have a few more on this question. Another challenge is that people will not reconcile their bank accounts, which means that you compare the balance that you have based to the bank's balance on the statement. And reconciling bank accounts, this is a lot of times how problems are found in a lot of companies. Fraud is discovered, double payments, or if the vendors are charging you wrong. A lot of this is discovered when you go through and reconcile your bank. And it also is just for accuracy. You want to have if you're going to take the time to do the work, you want it to be accurate. So you get that accuracy by reconciling every month your bank accounts, your credit cards, your loans that you have.
Yeah, I see that a lot with people that are doing a lot of things online, a lot of online payments or bill pay online, that they're not going back and checking, or they should be consistently checking online because fraud can happen. And so it's very important that they're going in and they're reconciling their credit card statements and their bank statements.
Yeah, and something that I've seen a lot, which you wouldn't think we'd see in this day and age, but people will cash a check twice because for some reason, like with the mobile deposit, it might not read the number fully or something, or sometimes it does read the number and the bank just doesn't catch it. So if you're doing a bank rec, in QuickBooks, it'll tell you, hey, you already had that check. What are you doing putting it in twice? It'll give you a warning, and then you can say, oh, well, I wrote this check 7 months ago and now it got cashed a second time. So that's kind of a common fraud that happens. And then sometimes it's just a mistake. The person doesn't realize they cashed it already, but sometimes it's actual fraud. Okay, there's a couple more things on here. Another challenge is people don't look at their profit and loss. And again, this goes back to sort of relying on memory. They think, oh, I made about this much. I don't need to look at it, or I don't spend that much. But if you look at the P&L, it will tell you exactly what you made and exactly what you spent. And I can say, working with clients for 10 years, it's almost always a surprise for people the first couple of months that they look at their P&L. They go, oh, well, I do spend that much, or I didn't know I made that much money, or whatever they were thinking. How it's not always the same as what the report shows. So it's always good to know where you stand, even with personal books as well. And then
you charge a little here and $20 there and another $10 there. You go out to dinner, $30, and before you know, you got $1,000 charged on your credit card.
Yeah, and if you click on like in QuickBooks, if you click on the category, because someone will say, oh, I didn't spend, there's no way I could have eaten that many meals. If you click on it, it will tell you, it'll tell you every date and every amount that you spent. So
a funny story, a couple years ago, one of my clients, I organized an event for them, and I had brought food in, and Julie saw a charge on my credit card for it was one of those fast food Mexican restaurants, wasn't it? And she calls me up and she says, Janet, I know you like to eat, but you've charged $200 here. And I said, oh, that was for so-and-so client. I bought food for their event, but she was on top of it. Okay, so let me ask you another question. To keep your clients organized, can you describe what documents you produce for your clients each month?
Most people, they want to see their profit and loss, like we talked about, or I give it to them so they can get used to looking at it. And then balance sheet, which is a good way to know where you stand. The reconciliations for all the different accounts that you might have. There's transaction reports that some people like to see, which is just a list of all the transactions, just kind of by date order, everything that went on. Payroll reports, and then a lot of personal books. It's like you can do a budget, you can get your budget report, or you can get your personal P&L for your personal accounting. Those are most common.
Yeah. I see a lot of people who are W-2 employees, meaning they're working for someone and getting a paycheck, but yet they want to budget their personal expenses because they don't realize how much eating out they're doing, or they're trying to save for buying a house and they want to know, well, where can I cut? And so by having their personal expenses on a spreadsheet, it's a good way to monitor and see where you might be able to cut.
Exactly.
How are you keeping records organized for your clients with regards to the government loans that came out during COVID, the PPP, the EIDL, the SBA loans, and other loans that were given during this time?
I think with almost everybody, I've created a separate spreadsheet for each of these loans, just so it's easy kind of for both of us to see what's been spent and what's remaining. And then initially when everybody was applying for these loans, we discussed, okay, what is the purpose of this loan and what expenses that do you have that we can use for each of these different loans? Because some of them you weren't allowed to use, you couldn't use it twice. You had to use the expense on one or the other, or maybe use it on one until that loan was used up, and then you could move it over to the other. So, and that was a discussion that happened at the beginning. And then again, going back to not procrastinating, as soon as the expense was incurred, it was put onto one of the spreadsheets so that it was always, you could always see where you were at with the loan. And then I guess, yeah, in QuickBooks, for some of my larger clients, it was easier just in QuickBooks to make a separate class tracking for each of the loans so you can run the report on there and see where you're at.
And did just today there was some announcements about
yes, it was actually it came out, I think, over the last couple of days. That it was passed on March 21st. There was an extension of the CARES Act that was part of the original COVID relief, and it's still, the forms are still being developed by the IRS, but it basically is extending the sick pay and sick leave for family for employees. You can get payroll tax credits for paying your employees that are out because they're COVID positive, and they've now extended that to also be for if you have to go get vaccinated and you can't get an appointment outside of your work hours, you can use it for that, or for any illness you may incur from the vaccine. That's part of the act as well. It's still finalizing all the paperwork for that. But.
And do you know, and things are constantly changing, and the forgiveness application has changed quite a bit. Do you know if people are going to have to submit their receipts that they spent the money on, or I know you've done a few forgiveness applications. Are they requiring the backup documentation?
The PPPs that I have done forgiveness on, they are requiring bank statements and payroll tax forms. I know they've talked about simplifying it. I'm not sure if that's been done yet. And as far as the other loans, they are just saying to keep good receipts in case they audit you. As you know, they were unrolled quickly, so they were kind of expecting there may be a lot of fraud, and if they suspect that it was fraud, they're gonna want a lot of backup documentation.
Right, and being here in California, there definitely was a lot of fraud with the unemployment insurance here in California, to the tune of, well, we don't want to talk about it. It's pretty bad. So yes, these are all reasons why you have to keep good records.
Prove that you didn't buy a car with your EID alone, or
right.
Or some people, they make big purchases that.
How do you keep up with all the changes in bookkeeping?
Well, you mentioned before that I am a member of the American Institute of Professional Bookkeepers. They do a monthly newsletter called the General Ledger, which is very helpful. And they have a website you can go on as well. And then I also belong to Spidell's, which is they offer continuing education, but they also do newsletters. And lately, with all the changes, they will send out, they do weekly emails, but if something is urgent, they'll do an extra email to let you know that, hey, this just got enacted today. Here's what we know so far. And then payroll updates I get from usually QuickBooks or the different payroll companies that I use. And also I have some Facebook groups that are for accounting professionals that are really good information on them.
Good. And what is the most common disorganization that you see with payroll? Businesses that have payroll.
Well, there's a lot of issues that can come up with payroll. I think one of the most important things is just when you have a new hire that you get the proper paperwork initially. And some of the things that can come up with payroll, like garnishments, there may be garnishments that people have for taxes or child support or medical bills, and you want to make sure that you're taking that out of their check, so you don't get the bill for it and not have the money. And something that's very common that I didn't realize was common until I did payroll for people is that a lot of people have a name that they go by that is not their actual name at all. And so they may have told everybody at the company that their name is something, and then when you get their paperwork, their legal name is actually something completely different. So you want to make sure that you have their proper legal name in the payroll system, and you can get that from their their ID that they give you when they fill out their I-9, their driver's license or passport. Or social security. And then you can call them whatever they want to be called, but for payroll, you need to have their proper name so you don't get in trouble when you do their W-2. And then some other issues that can come up is just making sure that you have enough money in your account for payroll taxes, since those are usually due after you do the payroll. You have to make sure you account for that. And deciding how you're going to pay your employees when payday falls on a holiday. having a policy in place so people know if they're going to be paid a day late or a day early because their payday falls on a weekend or a holiday. And also having a very clear policy on holiday pay if it applies to your business. Some businesses are open on major holidays and it's not considered holiday pay, or there's, you are expected to be there mandatory, but people can get very confused on these issues.
Do you have any kind of feel on what the percentages of people that still get paper paychecks versus automatic deposits of payroll?
Well, I do payroll, and there are there's usually a few people that prefer a paper paycheck, and they don't, we don't require, like a lot of companies, they don't require you to have direct deposit, so you can get a paper paycheck. So I'd say it's probably less than 5%, but there are some people that prefer that, and some businesses I have seen, they will do a paper check, and you have to come pick it up on payday if you're not working. But it's not very common with all the technology. It's not very common. Most people want their money as soon as they can get it.
And in the last year, I think, or 2 years, they came out with new W4 forms, right?
Right.
Can you talk about the changes with regards to that?
Well, most states now have a W4 that you can fill out as well. So I know California does, and here in Idaho, we also do. And basically, what the main change, they want to make sure they're getting their money that they're supposed to, that they're not waiting till the end of the year to get these people's money, because a lot of people will have multiple jobs or multiple sources of income. And if they work at a job that they only make maybe $5,000 a year, it would normally calculate that as, well, you don't owe any withholding tax. Your income's too low. You're only going to make $5,000 for the whole year. But that person may have 6 other jobs and make $85,000, and then they need to be taking a lot more tax out. So the new form is supposed to make things a little more accurate for that purpose. And also it has a spot where you can have extra withholding taken out of your check. Like if every year you owe tax, maybe because your spouse's income is high or something, you can just tell your employer, like, okay, take $100 out extra every check.
And then the 1099 for the person who's the true independent contractor that you have to write a 1099 for. I remember there was a change too in the law. It used to be that you only had to send in one 1099 to the IRS or the federal government, and then they would notify the individual states, but this year they changed it.
Yes.
So can you comment about that? And like you had to file double, right? You had to send in a 1099 to IRS and to the Franchise Tax Board for California.
Yeah, the IRS announced that they're not going to share the data that they receive on 1099s with the individual states anymore. And that it was sort of I know for California, it was kind of a very late instruction that they were finally able to give, to say, how are we supposed to get these to you? So in California, you have to file with the IRS and with the Franchise Tax Board. And then every state, like you may pay someone who doesn't live in California or your state. So you have to figure out, if you're paying someone in New Jersey, what do you have to file with that state? Or is it sufficient to just do IRS? Because every state is now different. So that's a little bit of another step we have to do at the end of the year.
What are the most common disorganization issues you see with personal accounting?
Some of this is kind of repeating, but it's okay because it's all important. Saving important documentation, like one example is if you buy a home or you refi your home, you always want to save that paperwork forever because you're gonna need it at some point. And a car, if you purchase a car or lease a car, you want to make sure that you save that documentation. Another receipt that seemed to be hard to track are donations. You always want to try to keep track of your donation receipts, even when you do non-cash. Have them write you a receipt when you drop off your donation. Let's see. We talked about this too, guessing on expenses. A lot of people want to just estimate at the end of the year because it's too much work to go through a whole year of receipts and get an actual number. So I'll just guess it's probably similar to last year. And then we had said waiting till the last minute to gather documents. That's all. A lot of that has been repeated. Here's a kind of important point is making sure that when you deposit money in your personal bank account that you notate if it's not income. So you may get like a cashback reward or unclaimed property, or you may get money back from something you returned. Make sure you don't record that as income because you don't want to pay tax on stuff that you don't have to. And this is something that I've seen. It doesn't, probably nobody here does this, but be aware of every, not being aware of every bank account, credit card, and investment account that you have in your name. If you have an investment account and you don't give the 1099 to your CPA or you don't put it in your program, you could owe tax or you could be due a refund, but there'd be no way to know that you have that unless you provide the paperwork. And some people, they have accounts they don't know that they even have because they forget about them.
Yep, I spent a lot of time with my clients calling various financial brokerage accounts and insurance companies and bank accounts because I find old papers and they don't know if it's still current. And this is why I create a lot of filing systems to keep all this paper in order. It's really, really important, as Julie is saying.
Yeah, we had a client when I worked for the CPA, we had a client, she was actually due a $14,000 refund from the Franchise Tax Board. But she had just this investment account that she completely forgot about. And I think several years later, it all kind of, she figured it all out and she had to go back and undo a lot of returns because it was such a significant amount of money she wanted to get her refund.
Right.
And then also just when you get your start getting your tax forms in the mail or via email at the end of the year, make sure you keep track of all those, even those little 1099s that show you made $30 in interest at your bank account. You want to make sure you don't misplace those because you could get a letter in the mail and say, hey, you didn't report $31. We're going to charge you, $4 tax. Please send it in. You don't want to have to deal with these kinds of issues.
So as all of you heard tonight, that the importance of being organized with your finances. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can unmute and ask. And while people are typing, I want to say thank you to Julie for all the important information. And I also want to thank MJ Finstrom, who's the owner of a digital marketing company called Hot Dogs, and she's been the one that has been moderating the technology tonight. And she does wonderful marketing work and promotion work using Constant Contact and podcasts and all kinds of really neat things. Does anyone have, okay, we have a question. What is the best way to determine the extra withholding to suggest to an employer? I've tried the calculator, but always seems to be a little bit off.
Okay, I would say I don't know if your income is consistent every year, but it might be good to just go off of your prior year. So in 2020, if you owed tax, use that as your guideline for how much extra you want to withhold. If you're finding the calculator is not a good number, use your prior tax year.
And the CPA should be able, if they used a CPA, they should be able to advise.
To estimate, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
How long should you keep you mentioned lease payments and stuff. What if you leased a car 15 years ago? Do you need to keep that, or how long, when can you toss out things as a small business owner?
Well, a car lease you would probably be safe to shred after 7 years, but things that are major, obviously a house purchase is something you want to keep forever. If it's some kind of like large equipment, you may want to keep that until you actually don't have it anymore.
Because if it's a large piece of equipment, it's probably going to be amortized on the taxes for several years. And probably with the lease, I would keep it 7 years after the lease is up. Any other questions or comments? Well, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and thank MJ and Julie. And every month I have an interview with an expert in their field. Next month in April, it's going to be really interesting. I'm going to have another organizer, one of my colleagues, her expertise is in digital assets after death. What happens to those passwords and those accounts that you have online? And this is not something that faces just an 80 or 90-year-old person. This could, could happen at any time. We have to be prepared and know what to do with our digital assets. In May, I'm going to have a photo organizer talk about how to organize all those photos you have on your computer, your phone, and the printed photos. In June, going to have a closet designer talking about organizing, how to design. He builds custom cabinets for closets and other rooms in the house. So this will come out when MJ gets the post going out for April. There'll be a link to this recording so you can listen to it again. Thank you for joining tonight, and everyone have a good rest of the evening.